Hello everyone, it is Sean Verrick here for WhoCulture. I hope you're doing well. If you aren't, give me a cuddle. We are going to go through all of the Easter eggs now and details from Dot and Bubble, and I think it's safe to say this episode has got people talking. I hope you've watched our ups and downs video that was released the other day. So what we're going to do straight away is jump straight into number 21, which is right from the off we're introduced to the Dot and Bubble concept, with the citizens of Fine Time, including Lindy's close friends, revolving around her head in a giant colourful bubble. You can see dozens and dozens of faces floating by, and while you might have thought that some of these faces were computer generated in some way, they're actually all real people. 30 supporting actors were dolled up with multiple different costumes and hairstyles, so they looked like different characters. They were then given different prompts and props and lines, all to create the illusion of every screen containing a unique character. And then in number 20, Lindy notices that one of her close friends, Jimbo, is missing. If that name rings a bell, that's because it's one of Russell T Davies' go-to names whenever he has a random side character in one of his episodes. Think about season 1, the episode The End of the World. The Ninth Doctor dubs one of his spider droids on the platform Jimbo. Jimbo is also the name of one of the workers at Adipose Industries, who apparently keeps the printer well stocked. Jackie Tyler also mentioned someone called Jimbo in the End of Time Part 2, who was supposed to give her and Rose a lift. And most recently, Wild Blue Yonder saw the 14th Doctor and Donna label the slow-moving white robot on the spaceship Jimbo.
Hello, Jimbo!
It's basically good old Jimbo. He's been with RTD and Doctor Who from the very beginning. Number 19, we're going to stick with the bubble and the overall concept for this episode. This is an idea that's been percolating in Russell T Davies' mind for a very long time. We went into this on the ups and downs. He originally pitched the concept of visible Twitter to Stephen Moffat in April 2010 during the launch of Season 5, Matt Smith's first series as the 11th Doctor. This means that Dot and Bubble could have actually been an 11th Doctor story, which is interesting when you consider the Fine Time citizens' attitude towards the 15th Doctor specifically. The reason it wasn't made back then is simply because it was too expensive, and with the floating CGI bubbles on screen for most of the runtime, yeah, that makes perfect sense in my head. Number 18, so while the idea of Dot and Bubble actually predates Black Mirror, which started in 2011, Russell T Davies has called this episode Doctor Who's clearest step into Black Mirror territory. Black Mirror, of course, is an anthology show which mostly depicts futuristic dystopias and some bloody scary sci-fi technology, tackling relevant societal and political issues in an allegorical manner. Try saying that 10 times fast. One of the clearest comparisons to Dot and Bubble is the Black Mirror episode Nosedive, which revolves around a society where everyone is addicted to their phones, and they can give people a rating out of 5 stars. The higher your overall rating, the better you'll be able to live. Everyone in that world is heartless underneath their shiny social media exteriors, which certainly rings true of the citizens of Fine Time as well, which we particularly find out toward the end. Number 17, Lindy finally gets out of bed and we get a walk through her apartment. So there's bright pastel colours everywhere and quirky furnishings to bring this world to life beautifully, but the cleverest detail is actually the amount of circles that are subtly hidden around the place. Every single window is circular, as are Lindy's light fittings, rug, bathroom mirror, and some of the shapes in her wall art. Aside from fitting in with the offbeat design of the episode, this subtlety plays into the idea that these people are literally trapped in their own bubbles. The world around them is circular, it is an echo chamber. Less subtle is the giant Simpsons movie dome surrounding Fine Time, but listen, sometimes Russell D Davies likes to go for the obvious farting politicians approach, do you know what I mean? Number 16 then, and Lindy enters her bathroom, and we meet arguably one of the greatest characters in fiction, Dr. P. Dr. P is played by actor Max Boast, and this isn't actually his first connection to Doctor Who, sort of. Boast features in a few episodes of Sex Education alongside Ncuti Gatwa, where he played a character called Tom Baker, which is, of course, also the name of the man who played the 4th Doctor. Number 15, after the title sequence we get an establishing shot of Fine Time, complete with a weatherman explaining that there's something wrong with the weather satellites. The reason he says this is because the weather in Wales during January, when the exterior scenes was shot, was expected to be bleak and windy, and surprise surprise, it was. And so, because Fine Time is supposed to be this perfect sunny utopia, the line about a problem with the weather satellites was used to explain why it was windy and dull.
Not gonna lie, we've got a little bit of trouble with the weather satellites.
Number 14, and we're going to stick with that establishing shot for a second, and all of the buildings we can see in this skyline have been added in post-production to make Fine Time seem more futuristic. According to the director Dylan Holmes Williams, the aim here was to make Fine Time look Blade Runner-y. And if you go back and look at some of the cityscapes in Ridley Scott's original 1982 Blade Runner, complete with their giant holographic people beamed onto the walls, you can absolutely see the comparison. Number 13, and Lindy arrives at her office for a hard day's work. Well, a day's work. Well, work. On the desk in front of her is an interface of some kind, and I'm sure it's no coincidence that this interface looks exactly like the common shape of a video game controller. To me, this suggests that they're either doing essentially meaningless work, that they're just playing a game, they're messing around, or they're just not really doing anything important, almost as if it's some sort of distraction technique. Number 12, Lindy lowers her bubble at Ruby's instructions, and we get our first gloriously disgusting full-view shot of one of the space slugs. R.I.P. Bertie Lester, we hardly knew ya. As revealed in the behind-the-scenes material, these space slugs do actually have a name. They're called man-traps, while Russell T Davies also refers to them as things in the Doctor Who magazine. Man-traps is quite an apt name in more ways than one. Not only do they eat humans, but the physical on-set version of the creature actually had 3 fully grown men inside of it, operating it. Imagine that for a bizarre day of work. The name Man-Trap, of course, is also tied into Star Trek, which we know Russell T Davies is a big fan of. The Man-Trap, which featured a monster that sucked the salt out of people's blood, the Salt of Empire if you were, is the first ever televised episode of Star Trek the original series. Fun. And of course, The Thing is one of the scariest sci-fi movies ever made. Number 11. Throughout this episode, we see Lindy being a lot more hostile towards the Doctor than she is towards Ruby, asking if the man-traps are something to do with him, saying that he's going to be disciplined when all this is over, and many more instances. These all hint towards that final moment where Lindy is revealed to be a massive racist, and this was also hinted in some of the costuming too. Lindy is wearing a blue top while the Doctor's is bright orange, and blue and orange also just so happen to be directly contrasting colours. Number 10, Lindy says that all the fine-timers do is work for 2 hours a day and then party, and Ruby quips back, it's like Love Island the planet. Love Island is, obviously, an incredibly popular British reality show where a group of conventionally very hot people live together on an island for a bit, and that's it. That's the show. It is like bubblegum for the eyes. In Doctor Who Unleashed, Russell T Davies also describes Fine Time as Love Island for the rich, so Love Island was clearly on his mind when he was devising Dot and Bubble. And at number 9, it's time for this week's Twist Watch. For those who still aren't aware of what's going on here, Susan Twist is the name of an actress who has had 7 completely different roles since Doctor Who returned last year. She played Isaac Newton's mate, Mrs. Meridrew, in Wild Blue Yonder, the woman in the pub in The Church on Ruby Road, the comms officer in Space Babies, a tea lady in The Devil's Cord, the ambulance interface in Boom, the hiker in 73 Yards, and now Lindy's mother, Penny Pepper Bean. Tantalizingly, this is the first time both the Doctor and Ruby have fully recognised her. Now that they're aware of this mystery too, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a confrontation between them and Twist's character in Rogue. Let us know your theories on this one as it develops. Not long to wait until we find out the truth, which is also a scary thing to say because we're more than halfway through the season. At number 8, Lindy convenes an urgent meeting of all her remaining friends by using the command Priority 1. Like Jimbo, this is another one of those words or phrases that's popped up in the show a few times before. In the Series 3 finale, Last of the Time Lords, also written by Russell T Davies, Professor Docherty accesses the Priority 1 communications network when she's ratting out Martha Jones to the Master. Then in Day of the Doctor, Kate Stewart mentions Priority 1 when she's asking for access to the Black Archive.
Priority 1. I'm going to need access to the Black Archive.
Priority 1 was also the name of a distress signal in the Doctor Who Star Trek crossover comic Assimilation. Number 7, another reused word or phrase, this time a number 55. The Doctor informs Lindy that her escape conduit has an access point on Plaza 55, and this seems to be one of Russell's go-to numbers because he's used it multiple times already in this era. In the Star Beast, the Doctor and Donna both say that she has only 55 seconds to live after the Doctor activates the Meta-Crisis, and in the Giggle, the galvanic beam platform is locked at level 55.
Platform locking at level 55.
Earlier in Dot and Bubble, Lindy also says that her t-shirt is a classic design from the year 5-5. Why 55? Who knows? Number 6 sees Lindy bumping into Ricky September, and one of the first things he does is grab her hand to lead her away from the slugs. The grabbing of a companion's hand is a very Doctor-esque move that we've seen a lot over the years. It's the Doctor taking charge, commanding the situation, and often leading their companions away from danger. I think this was done intentionally on Russell T Davies' part to make Ricky seem like the most Doctor-esque character possible. He's brave, he's level-headed, he's smart, and constantly reassuring and protective of Lindy. He fills the role we typically we expect of the Doctor. The reason this is important is that it shows how accepting Lindy is of a white Doctor, in stark contrast to her treatment of the 15th Doctor at the end of the episode. Number 5, Lindy and Ricky go through a door that takes them down to the underground tunnels, and on that door is a symbol that bears a striking resemblance to the iconic PlayStation triangle button, even down to the exact same green colour. I'm not really sure what this symbol means in the context of Find Time. This door leads them down, that the arrow is pointing up. Like we mentioned earlier with the video game controller on Lindy's desk, it could play into the idea of how the Find Timers treat everything as fun and games, or it could just be a cool shape. Number 4 sees the Doctor describing Lindy's dot as an anti-grav device, and this is more interesting than it first seems. What happened to Mavity, Doctor? Now, sure, this could be an oversight from Russell T Davies, but let's not forget that the Doctor still remembers the original word for Mavity. He even says gravity in Wild Blue Yonder before quickly correcting himself when Donna notices.
Caught in the gravity field.
Caught in the what?
Mavity field.
What's more interesting is that Ruby doesn't seem to notice, though to be fair, she is slightly concerned about the impending murderous Dot at this time. Number 3, one of the big twists in the episode is that the Dots are evil. Shock! Horror! Who saw that coming? This leads to a sequence where Ricky September fends off Lindy's Dot with a metal pipe, and the way he holds the pipe in certain moments is very evocative of the sequence in Star Wars A New Hope, where Luke undergoes lightsaber training by fending off a small floating dot. Number 2, at the end of the episode we finally meet the Doctor in the flesh, and he's wearing that bright orange jumper complete with a 10th Doctor-esque long coat. This was actually the very first 15th Doctor costume that was revealed, all the way back in December of 2022. At the time we all assumed it would be his main costume. How wrong we were. That fashionable rogue. The Doctor also wore this costume during an early scene of the church on Ruby Road, and hopefully we see more of this look in the future. It might just be his best costume yet. Number 1, as the Doctor watches the Find Timers sail away, Murray Gold's fantastic score cranks up and we can hear what sounds like a little snippet of the long song, the 11th Doctor's regeneration theme, merging into a dark rendition of the 15th Doctor's theme. Murray Gold, of course, was the composer on Doctor Who between 2005 and 2017, and often reuses motifs and themes to add more depth to certain scenes. In Space Babies, for example, snippets of Gold's Gallifrey theme plays when the Doctor talks about being the last of the Time Lords. We also heard this in Wild Blue Yonder. So if this is a reprise of the long song, that's something Gold would definitely do, if nothing else to get nerds like us excited about an iconic piece of Doctor Who music. And that is everything for our list today. So much to go through in each of these episodes. I want to say a big, massive thank you to Ellie, who contributed to this, and to Danny as well, who put together so much of this. Yes, they're both legends. Keep things wibbly wobbly till I'm talking to you again, and I will see you soon. Thanks very much.